call this meeting to order. Carla, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Gilardi,
Here.
Commissioner Berman,
Here.
Vice Chair Long, Chair Moffett.
Here. All right, please stand for land acknowledgement.
Madam, I'd like to speak on this matter. Madam Chair, I'd like to speak on this matter.
You can speak during the public comment
Right, it
section
says,
right
According
afterwards.
to the Government Code, I'm going to lodge my objection for the record. According to Government Code 54954.3, every agenda for regular meeting shall provide an opportunity for a member of the public to directly address the legislative body on any item of interest to the public before or during the legislative body's consideration. This code is very clear.
Okay, go ahead and speak.
If you want to take a break and check me, I'm fine with taking a break.
I'm okay. If you want to speak
Thank you so
during
much,
this one,
Chair.
that's fine.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. I'm former City Councilman George Barrich, and I think it's high time citizens speak on this matter to bring to your attention. This is very silly, this land acknowledgement. It's very inappropriate, and I'll tell you why. It says here in your land acknowledgement that you're paying respect to the native Miwoks who were here for millennia. And the fact is, I want you to consider the science. We don't know how many millennia they were here. We don't know what other cultures of human beings were here before they were here. We don't know how they got here. We don't know whether they warred with other tribes, other species to get here. They probably fouled the land just like the rest of us foul it, and the land and the water, and they burned their trash, and they warred within themselves. Okay, there was plenty of that goes on in human civilization. I don't know why we're paying any respect. And the fact is, if Prue Draper, the historian, the town's historian, was alive today, may she rest in peace, you know, she would have a real problem with this as well. Okay, we don't know whether the Miwoks or the Pomo Indians left voluntarily this land, abandoned the land, sold the land, got pushed off the land. We really don't know. We don't know. So whoever came up with this is really ridiculous, but I have a hunch. I just want to let it rest with you. This is all about white guilt. Okay? It's inappropriate. It embarrasses this town. Every time someone reads this garbage, which is unsubstantiated, brought up by somebody who felt that they felt guilty or something that we're here and somehow we push other cultures off this land. We don't know. And I don't understand why this city hall cares. You know, Prue Draper was a town historian. She gave many workshops on the history, but there's many facts that are unknown about it. And I think this just smacks of some guilt here, and it just should be avoided at all costs. And with that being said, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And if you need to research that law, I would advise you to do so, and you can proceed with your land acknowledgement.
Thank you. Please stand for the land acknowledgement. The City of Cotati recognizes that we are on the ancestral lands of the coastal Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for millennia. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land we are on. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Madam Chair, may I speak on the Pledge of Allegiance, please? It's a matter on the agenda. I'd like to speak briefly on this matter.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I want to bring this to your attention because I think it's important. When I was on the City Council in 2009, one of the earliest items that was requested to be put on the City Council agenda was removing the Pledge of Allegiance. And that motion was brought forward by vice chair at the time, Mr. Bob Coleman. And I was sitting over here on this seat when he brought this up, and Councilwoman Pat Gilardi was sitting next to me, I believe. And he told the reasons why we should eliminate the Pledge of Allegiance. And he opened it up for discussion, and I explained to Mr. Coleman how inappropriate and how wrong that was. And if it wasn't for my colleague, Pat Gilardi, who agreed with me and said, I don't think this is the time for this, I think this is inappropriate, and I'm not going to go for it either. The two of us were able to persuade one other council member to kill that item to be up for agenda. And it lost support. And to this day, we can credit Pat Gilardi and myself and that third council member for having a Pledge of Allegiance here tonight, because we almost lost it. Okay, so I want you to know that if you haven't heard that story, you've heard it now. Thank you very much, Chair.
Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we move on to agenda item 5, which is the approval of minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the March 3rd meeting.
I second it.
Carla, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Gilardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Berman,
Yes.
Chair Moffett,
Yes. Let's move on to changes to the agenda. Staff, are there any changes?
There are no changes to the agenda this evening.
Thank you. Next, we have public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the commission on any items listed on the matter at hand or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the commission is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda during this period. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2023-01, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the matters at hand. The chair may extend the time limit for a reasonable time where disability accommodation has been requested. Any comments from the general public? Come on down.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
And I explained to Carla that I've asked for an additional minute, and all my documentation was given to the City Hall to justify that extra minute. First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I want to thank you all for serving tonight. But if you don't know, if you have not heard, we have a convicted money launderer on the Planning Commission. Okay? And it's very embarrassing. It's a stain on this town. I filed a criminal complaint against Ms. Berman, and before that complaint could be investigated, she slithered out of town and avoided prosecution and an investigation. After the statute of limitations ran, she's come back to town, and I want you to know that it's very inappropriate. She hustled me out of money. She hustled Robin Birdfeather. She hustled Mr. Foley. And I attended the FPPC meeting where her case went before the board in Sacramento. And I sat there hoping and expecting Ms. Berman to answer some questions for the board and exonerate me for having nothing to do with being hustled by her and her roommate, I guess. And she stood there speechless, tongue-tied. And I'm waiting for her to explain, and she could not explain. Well, they threw the book at her, okay? And Mrs. Berman, Miss Berman, you owe me a lot of money, okay? And it's time that you and I meet, bring your friends, and let's find out how you're going to pay me back, whether you need to be put on a payment plan or what you're going to do about it, okay? Because now you're back, and I'm back. And you've embarrassed this town, you've hustled me, okay, and we need to talk about it. I'm a very forgiving and gracious human being. And whatever you've gone through, I'm gonna be compassionate and I can hear about it. But you owe me, and we need to find out about it. And secondly, again, about the harm that has been done and the shame, the embarrassment to our town and our town pride was just unbelievable because of what you did and what you did to Linnell Hardy and so forth. Just unspeakable. And then when I was on the city council, where Ed's sitting right now, you came before the city council at this podium and looked at me, and you were so upset that I voted against the tax increase, voted against the downtown specific joke is what it is. And you looked at me and you said, George, I want to take you outside. I want to take you outside. That's what I want to do. I sat there in disbelief that you would be so bold and so crouched to say such a thing in public. But I humored you. You want to take me outside? Well, I'm going to tell you something. You still can, and I will oblige you. So anytime you want to take me outside, I think it's high time that you get that off your chest, and I give you an opportunity to do that. Okay, so you can think about that. You know how to get a hold of me. But that was on record until the city decided to purge the audio records of all those city council meetings. Remember, Ed? They purged them all because of the shenanigans that went on in this room in 2009. They're all gone. Audio meetings that could fit on a small thumb drive, they erased them. So, Madam.
Carla, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair Moffett. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in, dial *9. Neil Hancock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Planning Commission. I really appreciate that people meet here to be able to consider the city's business. And I'd like to bring you an update of two events that happened this last week. The Sonoma County Transportation Authority, which is the regional climate protection authority as well, has a climate action advisory committee. And as a Cotati resident, Susan Harvey appointed me to it. The last meeting had a look at, this is for county-wide, being able to bring up a county-wide view of things, the electrification for goals across Sonoma County. There's also a very active discussion going on within the community, the Climate Advisory Active Committee, about how to present a collaborative approach to climate communication. Just what is it that we're facing? We have real histories, we have real science that shows what's going on around our town and around the country and around the world. There was also on Saturday, separately, a Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition meeting, which was an advocacy summit for residents across Sonoma County to understand how to advocate sensibly to their local government for issues that really matter to the citizens of our citizens locally, how to be healthy, how to actually get out and enjoy the environment. So on the discussion panels, there was Dan Hasey, the Director of Transportation and Public Works, City of Santa Rosa, and he was clear about having embedded in the code a basic standard for safety for all across the Santa Rosa city. Similarly, Ariel Kelly, council member of Healdsburg City Council, talked about what Healdsburg is doing in Healdsburg with Healdsburg Avenue. They're going to be reformatting that. James Cameron, executive director of SCTA, also talked about the projects that are available and that there is financing, the STA Phase 2 One Bay Area grant, $100 million, that can be divided amongst the cities, including Cotati. Each city gets to bid 5 projects that they can put forward. And finally, there was a report of 2 young people under 30 in Berkeley who launched a citizens initiative last year and won for safe streets, for doing a bond measure to be able to upgrade the streets of Berkeley and how to make it safe for kids. So Measure FF. I just wanted to give you an update, a real citizen's view of some on-the-ground activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lori Alderman, you have the floor.
Hi, I wasn't sure if you're gonna I never understand the agenda on the Planning Commission, whether you take public comment after with the item. But anyways, I just want to talk about the general plan update. I think it's the whole reunification plan and everything of the hub is going way too far. We can't even afford the West Cotati Avenue and the 116 intersection in Alder, and these grand plans do nothing for us. It's the of like doing the hub again. What we need is and it doesn't address the wishes. So many people have asked for a senior center, a library, all this, and all of our money is going to our aging infrastructure. We need to have better plans on replacing our capital. The city hall you're sitting in is over 100 years old. Not earthquake retrofit. In the 1960s, it was Cotati School had to get rid of it because it wasn't earthquake safe enough for a school anymore. It was something like the Stamp Act. And anyway, so this keep delaying all these projects and everything, but then waste money on things like reunification of the hub and the 2009 DSP, which has never worked anyway. We were supposed to have a theater, we were supposed to have all these things in the DSP, and we need to have the general plan update be more responsive to what we need now, and or it's getting to a point, things are getting so bad, and especially the water and sewer and needing tanks and all that. I don't know how long we can have any kind of quality of life living here in Cotati if with these numbers behind all this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Moffitt, that will end public comment.
Thank you, Carla. All right, on to matters at hand.
The only item on the agenda tonight is the review by the Planning Commission of the Capital Improvement Program, and that will be presented by Public Works Director Craig Scott.
Fabulous, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. Thank you for the introduction. Now, this process tonight is to look at our capital improvement program, and this comes along in tandem with the annual process of the budget for the citywide, which is being annual, but it's about to move to from this point forward every 2 years. So I will not be making this presentation next year, it'll be the following year, because it's now a 2-year budget process. With the outline, next slide, please. Just going over what we're going to talk about tonight. It's the requested action, the basis of that, the purpose of the CIP. The CIP is a capital improvement plan. And then we talk in detail about the projects in each of the departments, listing the departments or the projects, and what general plan goal each project relates to, the next steps, and then the staff's recommendation. Next slide, please. The planning and zoning law, this is the gist of.
If you have not heard, we have a convicted money launderer on the Planning Commission, okay? And it's very embarrassing. It's a stain on this town. I filed a criminal complaint against Ms. Berman, and before that complaint could be investigated, she slithered out of town and avoided prosecution and an investigation. After the statute of limitations ran, she's come back to town. And I want you to know that it's very inappropriate. She hustled me out of money. She hustled Robin Birdfeather. She hustled Mr. Foley. And I attended the FPPC meeting where her case went before the board in Sacramento. And I sat there hoping and expecting Ms. Berman to answer some questions for the board and exonerate me for having nothing to do with being hustled by her and her roommate, I guess. And she stood there speechless, tongue-tied. And I'm waiting for her to explain, and she could not explain. Well, they threw the book at her, okay? And Mrs. Berman, Miss Berman, you owe me a lot of money, okay? And it's time that you and I meet, bring your friends, and let's find out how you're going to pay me back, whether you need to be put on a payment plan or what you're going to do about it, okay? Because now you're back, and I'm back. And you've embarrassed this town, you've hustled me, okay? And we need to talk about it. I'm a very forgiving and gracious human being. And whatever you've gone through, I'm gonna be compassionate and I can hear about it. But you owe me, and we need to find out about it. And secondly, again, about the harm that has been done and the shame, the embarrassment to our town and our town pride was just unbelievable because of what you did and what you did to Linnell Hardy and so forth. Just unspeakable. And then when I was on the city council, where Ed's sitting right now, you came before the city council at this podium and looked at me, and you were so upset that I voted against the tax increase, voted against the downtown specific joke is what it is. And you looked at me and you said, George, I want to take you outside. I want to take you outside. That's what I want to do. I sat there in disbelief that you would be so bold and so kraut to say such a thing in public. But I humored you. You want to take me outside? Well, I'm going to tell you something. You still can, and I will oblige you. So anytime you want to take me outside, I think it's high time that you get that off your chest, and I give you an opportunity to do that. Okay? So you can think about that. You know how to get a hold of me. But that was on record until the city decided to purge the audio records of all those city council meetings. Remember, Ed? They purged them all because of the shenanigans that went on in this room in 2009. They're all gone. Audio meetings that could fit on a small thumb drive, they erased them. So, Madam
Carla, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair Moffett. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in, dial *9. Neil Hancock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Planning Commission. I really appreciate that people meet here to be able to consider the city's business. And I'd like to bring you an update of two events that happened this last week. The Sonoma County Transportation Authority, which is the regional climate protection authority as well, has a climate action advisory committee. And as a Cotati resident, Susan Harvey appointed me to it. The last meeting had a look at, this is for county-wide, being able to bring up a county-wide view of things, the electrification for goals across Sonoma County. There's also a very active discussion going on within the community, the Climate Advisory Active Committee, about how to present a collaborative approach to climate communication. Just what is it that we're facing? We have real histories, we have real science that shows what's going on round our town and round the country and round the world. There was also on Saturday, separately, a Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition meeting, which was an advocacy summit for residents across Sonoma County to understand how to advocate sensibly to their local government for issues that really matter to the citizens of our citizens locally, how to be healthy, how to actually get out and enjoy the environment. So on the discussion panels, there was Dan Hasey, the Director of Transportation and Public Works, City of Santa Rosa, and he was clear about having embedded in the code a basic standard for safety for all across the Santa Rosa city. Similarly, Ariel Kelly, council member of Healdsburg City Council, talked about what Healdsburg is doing in Healdsburg with Healdsburg Avenue. They're going to be reformatting that. James Cameron, executive director of SCTA, also talked about the projects that are available and that there is financing, the STA Phase 2 One Bay Area grant, $100 million. That can be divided amongst the cities, including Cotati. Each city gets to bid 5 projects that they can put forward. And finally, there was a report of 2 young people under 30 in Berkeley who launched a citizens initiative last year and won for safe streets, for doing a bond measure to be able to upgrade the streets of Berkeley and how to make it safe for kids. So Measure FF. I just wanted to give you an update, a real citizen's view of some on-the-ground activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lori Alderman, you have the floor.
Hi, I wasn't sure if you're gonna I never understand the agenda on the Planning Commission, whether you take public comment after with the item. But anyways, I just want to talk about the general plan update. I think it's the whole reunification plan and everything of the hub is going way too far. We can't even afford the West Cotati Avenue and the 116 intersection in Alder, and these grand plans do nothing for us. It's the of like doing the hub again. What we need is and it doesn't address the wishes. So many people have asked for a senior center, a library, all this, and all of our money is going to our aging infrastructure. We need to have better plans on replacing our capital, the city hall you're sitting in is over 100 years old. Not earthquake retrofit. In the 1960s, Katati School had to get rid of it because it wasn't earthquake safe enough for a school anymore. It was something like the Stamp Act. And anyway, so this keep delaying all these projects and everything, but then waste money on things like reunification of the hub and the 2009 DSP, which has never worked anyway. We were supposed to have a theater. We were supposed to have all these things in the DSP, and we need to have the general plan update be more responsive to what we need now, and or it's getting to a point, things are getting so bad, and especially the water and sewer and needing tanks and all that. I don't know how long we can have any kind of quality of life living here in Katati if with these numbers behind all this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Moffett, that will end public comment.
Thank you, Carla. All right, on to matters at hand.
The only item on the agenda tonight is the review by the Planning Commission of the Capital Improvement Program, and that will be presented by Public Works Director Craig Scott.
Fabulous, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. Thank you for the introduction. Noah, this process tonight is to look at our capital improvement program, and this comes along in tandem with the annual process of the budget for the citywide, which is being annual, but it's about to move to, from this point forward, every 2 years. So I will not be making this presentation next year. It'll be the following year, because it's now a 2-year budget process. With the outline, next slide, please. Just going over what we're going to talk about tonight. It's the requested action, the basis of that, the purpose of the CIP. The CIP is a capital improvement plan, and then we talk in detail about the projects in each of the departments, listing the departments or the projects, and what general plan goal each project relates to. The next steps, and then the staff's recommendation. Next slide, please. The planning and zoning law. This is the gist of tonight's item.
And it's very embarrassing. It's a stain on this town. I filed a criminal complaint against Ms. Berman, and before that complaint could be investigated, she slithered out of town and avoided prosecution and an investigation. After the statute of limitations ran, she's come back to town. And I want you to know that it's very inappropriate. She hustled me out of money. She hustled Robin Birdfeather. She hustled Mr. Foley. And I attended the FPPC meeting where her case went before the board in Sacramento. And I sat there hoping and expecting Ms. Berman to answer some questions for the board and exonerate me for having nothing to do with being hustled by her and her roommate, I guess. And she stood there speechless, tongue-tied. And I'm waiting for her to explain, and she could not explain. Well, they threw the book at her, okay? And Ms. Berman, you owe me a lot of money, okay? And it's time that you and I meet, bring your friends, and let's find out how you're going to pay me back, whether you need to be put on a payment plan or what you're going to do about it, okay? Because now you're back, and I'm back. and you've embarrassed this town, you've hustled me, okay, and we need to talk about it. I'm a very forgiving and gracious human being, and whatever you've gone through, I'm gonna be compassionate, and I can hear about it, but you owe me, and we need to find out about it. And secondly, again, about the harm that has been done and the shame, the embarrassment to our town and our town pride was just unbelievable because of what you did and what you did to Linnell Hardy and so forth. Just unspeakable. And then when I was on the city council, where Ed's sitting right now, you came before the city council at this podium and looked at me, and you were so upset that I voted against the tax increase, voted against the downtown specific joke, is what it is. And you looked at me and you said, George, I want to take you outside. I want to take you outside. That's what I want to do. I sat there in disbelief that you would be so bold and so crouched to say such a thing in public. But I humored you. You wanted to take me outside? Well, I'm going to tell you something. You still can, and I will oblige you. So anytime you want to take me outside, I think it's high time that you get that off your chest, and I give you an opportunity to do that. Okay? So you can think about that. You know how to get a hold of me. But that was on record until the city decided to purge the audio records of all those city council meetings. Remember, Ed? They purged them all because of the shenanigans that went on in this room in 2009. They're all gone. Audio meetings that could fit on a small thumb drive, they erased them. So, Madam.
Carla, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair Moffett. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in, dial *9. Neil Hancock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Planning Commission. I really appreciate that people meet here to be able to consider the city's business. And I'd like to bring you an update of two events that happened this last week. The Sonoma County Transportation Authority, which is the regional climate protection authority as well, has a climate action advisory committee. And as a Cotati resident, Susan Harvey appointed me to it. The last meeting had a look at, this is for county-wide, being able to bring up a county-wide view of things, the electrification for goals across Sonoma County. There's also a very active discussion going on within the community, the Climate Advisory Active Committee, about how to present a collaborative approach to climate communication. Just what is it that we're facing? We have real histories, we have real science that shows what's going on round our town and round the country and round the world. There was also on Saturday, separately, a Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition meeting, which was an advocacy summit for residents across Sonoma County to understand how to advocate sensibly to their local government for issues that really matter to the citizens of our citizens locally, how to be healthy, how to actually get out and enjoy the environment. So on the discussion panels, there was Dan Hasey, the Director of Transportation and Public Works, City of Santa Rosa, and he was clear about having embedded in the code a basic standard for safety for all across the Santa Rosa city. Similarly, Ariel Kelly, council member of Healdsburg City Council, talked about what Healdsburg is doing in Healdsburg with Healdsburg Avenue. They're going to be reformatting that. James Cameron, executive director of SCTA, also talked about the projects that are available and that there is financing, the STA Phase 2 One Bay Area grant, $100 million, that can be divided amongst the cities, including Cotati. Each city gets to bid 5 projects that they can put forward. And finally, there was a report of 2 young people under 30 in Berkeley who launched a citizens initiative last year and won for safe streets, for doing a bond measure to be able to upgrade the streets of Berkeley and how to make it safe for kids. So Measure FF. I just wanted to give you an update, a real citizen's view of some on-the-ground activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lori Alderman, you have the floor.
Hi, I wasn't sure if you're gonna take, I never understand the agenda on the Planning Commission, whether you take public comment after with the item. But anyways, I just want to talk about the general plan update. I think it's the whole reunification plan and everything of the hub is going way too far. That's, we can't even afford the West Cotati Avenue and the 116 intersection in Alder, and these grand plans do nothing for us. It's the of like doing the hub again. What we need is and it also doesn't address the wishes. So many people have asked for a senior center, a library, all this, and all of our money is going to our aging infrastructure. We need to have better plans on replacing our capital. Not the city hall you're sitting in is over 100 years old. Not earthquake retrofit. In the 1960s, it was Cotati School had to get rid of it because it wasn't earthquake safe enough for a school anymore. There was something like the Stamp Act. And anyway, so this keep delaying all these projects and everything, but then waste money on things like reunification of the hub and the 2009 DSP, which has never worked anyway. We were supposed to have a theater, we were supposed to have all these things in the DSP, and we need to have the general plan update be more responsive to what we need now, and or it's getting to a point, things are getting so bad, and especially the water and sewer and needing tanks and all that. I don't know how long we can have any kind of quality of life living here in Cotati if with these numbers behind all this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Moffitt, that will end public comment.
Thank you, Carla. All right, on to matters at hand.
The only item on the agenda tonight is the review by the Planning Commission of the Capital Improvement Program, and that will be presented by Public Works Director Craig Scott.
Fabulous, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. Thank you for the introduction. Now, this process tonight is to look at our capital improvement program, and this comes along in tandem with the annual process of the budget for the citywide, which is being annual, but it's about to move to from this point forward every 2 years. So I will not be making this presentation next year, it'll be the following year, because it's now a 2-year budget process. With the outline, next slide, please. Just going over what we're going to talk about tonight. It's the requested action, the basis of that, the purpose of the CIP. The CIP is a capital improvement plan. And then we talk in detail about the projects in each of the departments, listing the departments or the projects, and what general plan goal each project relates to, the next steps, and then the staff's recommendation. Next slide, please. The planning and zoning law.
If you have not heard, we have a convicted money launderer on the Planning Commission, okay? And it's very embarrassing. It's a stain on this town. I filed a criminal complaint against Ms. Berman, and before that complaint could be investigated, she slithered out of town and avoided prosecution and an investigation. After the statute of limitations ran, she's come back to town. And I want you to know that it's very inappropriate. She hustled me out of money. She hustled Robin Birdfeather. She hustled Mr. Foley. And I attended the FPPC meeting where her case went before the board in Sacramento. And I sat there hoping and expecting Ms. Berman to answer some questions for the board and exonerate me for having nothing to do with being hustled by her and her roommate, I guess. And she stood there speechless, tongue-tied, and I'm waiting for her to explain, and she could not explain. Well, they threw the book at her, okay? And Ms. Berman, you owe me a lot of money, okay? And it's time that you and I meet, bring your friends, and let's find out how you're going to pay me back, whether you need to be put on a payment plan or what you're going to do about it, okay? Because now you're back and I'm back. And you've embarrassed this town, you've hustled me, okay? And we need to talk about it. I'm a very forgiving and gracious human being. And whatever you've gone through, I'm going to be compassionate and I can hear about it. But you owe me, and we need to find out about it. And secondly, again, about the harm that has been done and the shame, the embarrassment to our town and our town pride was just unbelievable because of what you did and what you did to Linnell Hardy and so forth. Just unspeakable. And then when I was on the city council, where Ed's sitting right now, you came before the city council at this podium and looked at me, and you were so upset that I voted against the tax increase, voted against the downtown specific joke, is what it is. And you looked at me and you said, George, I want to take you outside. I want to take you outside. That's what I want to do. I sat there in disbelief that you would be so bold and so crouched to say such a thing in public. But I humored you. You want to take me outside? Well, I'm going to tell you something. You still can, and I will oblige you. So anytime you want to take me outside, I think it's high time that you get that off your chest, and I give you an opportunity to do that. Okay? So you can think about that. You know how to get a hold of me. But that was on record until the city decided to purge the audio records of all those city council meetings. Remember, Ed? They purged them all because of the shenanigans that went on in this room in 2009. They're all gone. Audio meetings that could fit on a small thumb drive, they erased them. So, Madam
Carla, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair Moffett. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in, dial *9. Neil Hancock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Planning Commission. I really appreciate that people meet here to be able to consider the city's business. And I'd like to bring you an update of two events that happened this last week. The Sonoma County Transportation Authority, which is the regional climate protection authority as well, has a climate action advisory committee. And as a Cotati resident, Susan Harvey appointed me to it. The last meeting had a look at, this is for county-wide, being able to bring up a county-wide view of things, the electrification for goals across Sonoma County. There's also a very active discussion going on within the community, the Climate Advisory Active Committee, about how to present a collaborative approach to climate communication. Just what is it that we're facing? We have real histories, we have real science that shows what's going on round our town and round the country and round the world. There was also on Saturday, separately, a Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition meeting, which was an advocacy summit for residents across Sonoma County to understand how to advocate sensibly to their local government for issues that really matter to the citizens of our citizens locally. How to be healthy, how to actually get out and enjoy the environment. So on the discussion panels, there was Dan Hasey, the Director of Transportation and Public Works, City of Santa Rosa, and he was clear about having embedded in the code a basic standard for safety for all across the Santa Rosa city. Similarly, Ariel Kelly, council member of Healdsburg City Council, talked about what Healdsburg is doing in Healdsburg with Healdsburg Avenue. They're going to be reformatting that. James Cameron, executive director of SCTA, also talked about the projects that are available and that there is financing, the STA Phase 2 One Bay Area grant, $100 million, that can be divided amongst the cities, including Cotati. Each city gets to bid 5 projects that they can put forward. And finally, there was a report of 2 young people under 30 in Berkeley who launched a citizens initiative last year and won for safe streets, for doing a bond measure to be able to upgrade the streets of Berkeley and how to make it safe for kids. So Measure FF. I just wanted to give you an update, a real citizen's view of some on-the-ground activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lori Alderman, you have the floor.
Hi, I wasn't sure if you're gonna I never understand the agenda on the Planning Commission, whether you take public comment after with the item. But anyways, I just want to talk about the general plan update. I think it's the whole reunification plan and everything of the hub is going way too far. We can't even afford the West Cotati Avenue and the 116 intersection in Alder, and these grand plans do nothing for us. It's the of like doing the hub again. What we need is and it also doesn't address the wishes. So many people have asked for a senior center, a library, all this, and all of our money is going to our aging infrastructure. We need to have better plans on replacing our capital, the city hall you're sitting in is over 100 years old. Not earthquake retrofit. In the 1960s, it was Cotati School had to get rid of it because it wasn't earthquake safe enough for a school anymore. It was something like the Stamp Act. And anyway, so this keep delaying all these projects and everything, but then waste money on things like reunification of the hub and the 2009 DSP, which has never worked anyway. We were supposed to have a theater. We were supposed to have all these things in the DSP, and we need to have the general plan update be more responsive to what we need now, and or it's getting to a point, things are getting so bad, and especially the water and sewer and needing tanks and all that. I don't know how long we can have any kind of quality of life living here in Cotati, if with these numbers behind all this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Moffett, that will end public comment.
Thank you, Carla. All right, on to matters at hand.
The only item on the agenda tonight is the review by the Planning Commission of the Capital Improvement Program, and that will be presented by Public Works Director Craig Scott.
Fabulous, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. Thank you for the introduction. Now, this process tonight is to look at our capital improvement program, and this comes along in tandem with the annual process of the budget for the citywide, which is being annual, but it's about to move to, from this point forward, every 2 years. So I will not be making this presentation next year. It'll be the following year, because it's now a 2-year budget process. With the outline, next slide, please. Just going over what we're going to talk about tonight. It's the requested action, the basis of that, the purpose of the CIP. The CIP is a capital improvement plan, and then we talk in detail about the projects in each of the departments, listing the departments or the projects, and what general plan goal each project relates to, the next steps, and then the staff's recommendation. Next slide, please. The planning and zoning law, this is the gist of tonight's item, requires submittal of the city's program to the Planning Commission for a finding of conformity with the general plan. So that's what we're focusing on.
That complaint could be investigated. She slithered out of town and avoided prosecution and an investigation. After the statute of limitations ran, she's come back to town. And I want you to know that it's very inappropriate. She hustled me out of money. She hustled Robin Birdfeather. She hustled Mr. Foley. And I attended the FPPC meeting where her case went before the board in Sacramento. And I sat there hoping and expecting Ms. Berman to answer some questions for the board and exonerate me for having nothing to do with being hustled by her and her roommate, I guess. And she stood there speechless, tongue-tied. And I'm waiting for her to explain, and she could not explain. Well, they threw the book at her, okay? And Ms. Berman, you owe me a lot of money, okay? And it's time that you and I meet, bring your friends, and let's find out how you're going to pay me back, whether you need to be put on a payment plan or what you're going to do about it, okay? Because now you're back, and I'm back. And you've embarrassed this town, you've hustled me, okay? And we need to talk about it. I'm a very forgiving and gracious human being. And whatever you've gone through, I'm going to be compassionate and I can hear about it. But you owe me, and we need to find out about it. And secondly, again, about the harm that has been done and the shame, the embarrassment to our town and our town pride was just unbelievable because of what you did and what you did to Linnell Hardy and so forth. Just unspeakable. And then when I was on the city council, where Ed's sitting right now, you came before the city council at this podium and looked at me, and you were so upset that I voted against the tax increase, voted against the downtown specific joke is what it is. And you looked at me and you said, George, I want to take you outside. I want to take you outside. That's what I want to do. I sat there in disbelief that you would be so bold and so kraut to say such a thing in public. But I humored you. You wanted to take me outside? Well, I'm going to tell you something. You still can, and I will oblige you. So anytime you want to take me outside, I think it's high time that you get that off your chest, and I give you an opportunity to do that. Okay, so you can think about that. You know how to get a hold of me. But that was on record until the city decided to purge the audio records of all those city council meetings. Remember, Ed? They purged them all because of the shenanigans that went on in this room in 2009. They're all gone. Audio meetings that could fit on a small thumb drive, they erased them. So, Madam.
Carla, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair Moffett. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in, dial *9. Neil Hancock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Planning Commission. I really appreciate that people meet here to be able to consider the city's business. And I'd like to bring you an update of two events that happened this last week. The Sonoma County Transportation Authority, which is the regional climate protection authority as well, has a climate action advisory committee. And as a Cotati resident, Susan Harvey appointed me to it. The last meeting had a look at, this is for county-wide, being able to bring up a county-wide view of things, the electrification for goals across Sonoma County. There's also a very active discussion going on within the community, the Climate Advisory Active Committee, about how to present a collaborative approach to climate communication. Just what is it that we're facing? We have real histories, we have real science that shows what's going on around our town and around the country and around the world. There was also on Saturday, separately, a Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition meeting, which was an advocacy summit for residents across Sonoma County to understand how to advocate sensibly to their local government for issues that really matter to the citizens of our citizens locally, how to be healthy, how to actually get out and enjoy the environment. So on the discussion panels, there was Dan Hasey, the Director of Transportation and Public Works, City of Santa Rosa, and he was clear about having embedded in the code a basic standard for safety for all across the Santa Rosa city. Similarly, Ariel Kelly, council member of Healdsburg City Council, talked about what Healdsburg is doing in Healdsburg with Healdsburg Avenue. They're going to be reformatting that. James Cameron, executive director of SCTA, also talked about the projects that are available and that there is financing, the STA Phase 2 One Bay Area grant, $100 million, that can be divided amongst the cities, including Cotati. Each city gets to bid 5 projects that they can put forward. And finally, there was a report of 2 young people under 30 in Berkeley who launched a citizens initiative last year and won for safe streets, for doing a bond measure to be able to upgrade the streets of Berkeley and how to make it safe for kids. So Measure FF. I just wanted to give you an update, a real citizen's view of some on-the-ground activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lori Alderman, you have the floor.
Hi, I wasn't sure if you're gonna take, I never understand the agenda on the Planning Commission, whether you take public comment after with the item. But anyways, I just want to talk about the general plan update. I think it's the whole reunification plan and everything of the hub is going way too far. That's, we can't even afford the West Cotati Avenue and the 116 intersection and Alder, and these grand plans do nothing for us. It's the of like doing the hub again. What we need is and it also doesn't address the wishes. So many people have asked for a senior center, a library, all this, and all of our money is going to our aging infrastructure. We need to have better plans on replacing our capital. Not the city hall you're sitting in is over 100 years old. Not earthquake retrofit. In the 1960s, it was Cotati School had to get rid of it because it wasn't earthquake safe enough for a school anymore. There was something like the Stamp Act. And anyway, so this keep delaying all these projects and everything, but then waste money on things like reunification of the hub and the 2009 DSP, which has never worked anyway. We were supposed to have a theater, we were supposed to have all these things in the DSP, and we need to have the general plan update be more responsive to what we need now, and or it's getting to a point, things are getting so bad, and especially the water and sewer and needing tanks and all that. I don't know how long we can have any kind of quality of life living here in Cotati if with these numbers behind all this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Moffett, that will end public comment.
Thank you, Carla. All right, on to matters at hand.
The only item on the agenda tonight is the review by the Planning Commission of the Capital Improvement Program, and that will be presented by Public Works Director Craig Scott.
Fabulous, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. Thank you for the introduction. Now, this process tonight is to look at our capital improvement program, and this comes along in tandem with the annual process of the budget for the citywide, which is being annual, but it's about to move to, from this point forward, every 2 years. So I will not be making this presentation next year. It'll be the following year, because it's now a 2-year budget process. With the outline, next slide, please. Just going over what we're going to talk about tonight, it's the requested action, the basis of that, the purpose of the CIP. The CIP is a capital improvement plan. And then we talk in detail about the projects in each of the departments, listing the departments or the projects, and what general plan goal each project relates to, the next steps, and then the staff's recommendation. Next slide, please. The planning and zoning law, this is the gist of tonight's item, requires submittal of the city's program to the Planning Commission for a finding of conformity with the general plan. So that's what we're focused on tonight. I've heard talk of the finances and the priorities, relative priorities of the projects. That's not what's on the table tonight. It's looking at understanding each of the projects. There's 40 of them.
Fence right there along the Class 1 bikeway, right before Gravenstein Way. Is the job just to cut, or if they run into trash, do they pick up the trash? Because I noticed that there is trash that seems to be left behind. So I wonder about that. And I am concerned about at Katati Park that the children's area fills up like a swimming pool when we have rain. And if that is going to be, I don't know what we can do at this point about that.
Maybe I'll start with that one. Have you observed it flooding in this last rain? No. Our maintenance crews have not noticed that either. I believe we had rains in December, then we had a little bit of a reprieve in January, and then we had rains February on, right? In response to the December rains, we got that complaint of the flooding, and we, of course, observed it ourselves. And we went in there and looked at the drain, and it was installed where it was virtually impossible for any water to get into the drain. It had 2 layers of fabric with dirt in between, and we couldn't figure out how that it got installed that way. So Public Works removed all of those impediments there and put in a French drain, and the water immediately just flowed by gravity into there. And as far as we're aware, and I just asked the superintendent just now in this meeting if he had noticed that the flooding had reoccurred, and he's not aware of any. So I think we fixed it. And if I could get to maybe some of your other questions, comments. So whose responsibility is the trash? Our MS4 permit, which is because we own stormwater pipelines and sewer pipelines, but mostly the stormwater pipelines, we have a response, and we have customers that could potentially release contaminants that would get into the streets and then find its way into our catch basins and stormwater. The city under that has the responsibility to enforce that, to reduce the pollution. But if you have a trash that's already in the creek, that's a really tough question, because where did it come from, right? So I would just venture and answer that it's everybody's responsibility. That's why in the fall we see the creek cleanup week, right, where we all get out there before the first rains come and get all that trash out of the creek. And there's buckets and buckets that get removed. So once that trash is in the creek, I would say it's everybody's responsibility. The water agency, Sonoma Water, they maintain much of it's their easement, and so they operate it, though, with a narrow focus on it being a flood channel. So they look at it from that lens, like what's impeding the flow of water through here. So they look at removing vegetation, and pieces of trash here and there aren't really a high concern. Environmental stewardship is a priority for them, so they will be partners with everybody else in removing that trash. weeds by the fence. Oh, yeah, no. So we have a routine twice a week that's in our asset management program that we do a program maintenance a couple times a week. It's just called City Clean, and where 2 public works staff are deployed, and they make rounds of all the streets in Cotati and all the parks, and they endeavor to pick up trash and note graffiti and do all the things. So they are tasked with picking up trash along the trail, along the roadways, and so forth. So that does happen.
I wonder about adding another creek cleanup after the great big rain, because that's when all the trash comes from downstream, or I think it's downstream, and washes through and goes up into trees and along the banks. It's pretty easy to get to, but there's a lot of it. And we do have one resident in Cotati who likes to go into the creek, and I'm concerned about his physical welfare and going into the creek, and I would prefer if we went in as a group, not just one person.
Well, we have our welfare to think about as well, and there's very unpredictable conditions in the creek when there's water in it. It's hard to tell how deep it is. You slip in there, and there's a lot of safety equipment and training. That would be something to consider.
Thank you. I know I'm going on a walk with the Laguna de Santa Rosa at the beginning of April with some Cotati residents. That should be interesting. I think they're very interested in volunteering for things like creek cleanups, et cetera. But yes, I would agree, not while the water is high. It can be very dangerous. I'm very happy to see Valparaiso have its own kind of section in here. I see that as a pretty big safety concern. I know we haven't had any accidents with pedestrians yet, and I hope that we never do. And so hopefully that'll really address that. Questions for you about lights. You said that the lights are timed on Old Redwood. Are they timed on East Cotati as well?
They have the capability to be timed, but on Old Redwood Highway, because we have the stop sign there at William George, they're not. Are they timed on East Cotati Avenue? Right at the tracks, the Santero Way and the lights at the tracks are timed for safety reasons. But no, those are not generally timed for traffic flow all the way down East Cotati Avenue. That's something, and then also, I mean, that's being hindered by having another 4-way stop sign at LaSalle. So until we get a signal there, until we get a signal at William George, there's not much strategic timing, traffic flow, things we can do, you know. But we are preparing for that day by having these traffic controllers that are these really capable computers that talk to one another and can do amazing things once we have every intersection controlled.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything else to report to either of you. No? Okay. Thank you, Director Scott. We appreciate your time. Moving on to staff reports.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few things to point out. March 29th, we're having the Climate Ready Cotati Fair from 10 to 2 at the Smart Depot. So I heard that we are looking for some volunteers. So if you or anyone you know is interested in volunteering, there's signups, I think, or at least contact on the city's website under Climate Ready Cotati in order to sign up and let people know. We're just looking for like 1 or 2 hour shifts, I think, for a couple different areas. Moving on, the vacancy on the planning commission, I believe is going to be filled at the next council meeting, is my understanding, is the goal. I'm not aware of the number of applications or any of those things. I'm going to get that information this week, but I haven't had a chance to talk to the city manager's office yet. They are running that process. If you have questions, obviously it will be on the agenda when it gets published on Friday. But if anybody's really can't wait for that, send me an email and I'll see what I can find out. But I'm not directly involved, so I haven't heard anything beyond the one application that we know we have from the gentleman who came to our meeting last meeting. And then the last thing I want to do is just publicly acknowledge our planning commission, or I'm sorry, our planning technician, Eli Areola. He has taken a full-time position with a private firm, so Eli is going to become a planning consultant, no longer serving the city in his role as a city employee. He may end up doing some work for the city in future roles, but we just really want to thank Eli for his last work. His work over last year is a big part of the department's success, and we'll definitely miss him, but I think we'll probably have a chance to see him in some of his future work around the county. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Do we have any information received after the agenda was posted?
Just the comments and the response from Public Works Director Scott that were added to the commission's agenda after they were received.
Thank you. All right, I officially adjourn us.